and it was mind blowing. As much as people don't understand why I did it, it was mind blowing. Hey, how are you doing?
Cool, man. Can you hear me right?
Yeah, that is an artistically perfect background you have there.
I'm like kind of staying in it's basically an art gallery, the place I'm staying in. It's kind of nice.
That was just perfectly framed. I couldn't have done it better myself.
Yeah. Where about you?
I'm at Cresta Spray View. So I'm by one of these colonial bars that they have.
Nice.
Cool. How are you keeping though?
I'm good.
Cool. No, I'm good. Should I have my bow tie on? Because I didn't know if I should put it on during or after my...
No. So the way this is going to work, I think, is...
Yeah.
I'm going to time you tying your bow tie.
Tying it.
So
this is going to be so embarrassing.
You're going to get... Are you in like a public place?
Yeah, I'm in a public place, which is cool.
That just adds like a little something extra.
Extra pressure. You should see me. It takes my wife, it takes YouTube videos every time I have to put one on. Oh, there's Nelsy.
Hey. Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, cool. If you want, we can start off with like a tutorial thing just to make sure you've got it, and then we can do...
No, it's okay. I think if I fumble through it and I set the worst record in the beginning, it sets everyone else at ease. So that would be cool.
I like it. So yeah, we'll do it right now at the beginning, and then sort of towards the middle, and then at the end. So you have like 3 times, and we can like get your best time. So.
Oh, okay, cool.
Fantastic. So should we go for it?
Yeah. Cool. Excellent. So I should start.
So I think start with it like level. So
around
your neck. Yeah. Button tied up, and then like hands up, and then when I
let me put these behind here so that they don't interfere. They probably will do it. Yeah, I'll probably suck at it. Okay, let me do that maybe.
Okay. No, levels. Put the bottoms level.
Oh, you want? Okay.
Yeah, because that's part of the challenge, right? Is to get that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Okay. I'm with you. I wanted to start on get set as opposed to on your mark. I know the feeling.
Okay, so hands up.
Hands up. Nelsy,
ready?
I'm gonna screw up.
Set. Go.
Oh my god. How am I on
here? I can hear Nelly in the background.
I know, right? I know.
He's got the one bow done.
Where am I? It's bastard guy. Where are you? No, so where's that loop thing? Can't find my loop thing. This was such a pain.
Time is moving.
Stop it. I'm there. I have it.
You're winning. Either way, you're winning.
No, wait.
Exactly.
Sorry. Okay, I still lost it. This is like the worst on record. If I get this.
It's also the best on record, so.
Really? Yeah, exactly. At the same time. So what time do I let go? This is the when I have a bow that you're satisfied with?
When you're happy to go out in public with it.
Okay. Let's see. I'm there. I've got my... Do you know what's confusing? When you watch yourself on a computer screen, you are inverted.
Oh,
so,
no. Okay.
Yeah, so... No. That's cool. It's good. It's kind of good to know. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Get it?
Here it comes. And then hands up when you're done.
Yeah, it's almost there. Just need to... Yeah, no, I just want to get the damn thing.
It's amazing.
All right.
Yes.
Wait,
nice.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. I'm not even going to try. I'm not going to try and get a better time.
Oh, wow. So
I think that's
for me, my screen is mirrored. Like I can, if I lift my right hand, it's,
yeah, so that's
inverted?
Yeah, so I don't know why these Mac screens are.
Yeah, I think
don't know. Maybe I said it.
Settings in Zoom somewhere, but that's good to know for the future. Nice job, though. That's great, especially seeing as everything was back to front.
I know it's weird. It's weird, but I should try practicing in future because I was like, I'm not going to practice again. Usually, you should see me do this backstage, and they've delayed calling me out because I'm still.
Oh yeah.
Coolies.
Nice. That's your first time. Let me see.
But you know what's funny is that you put one of these on and you end up spending the next 45 minutes adjusting yourself and like trying to put it back, correctly and fidgeting.
Yeah.
So you never really get it on, do you?
Yeah, and you gotta just like you like sort of make it look a bit pretty. But there's your time.
So I've got 146 to beat.
Yeah, nice. All right, cool. When was the first time you like ever did this? Ever tied a bow tie?
Wait, it was at a tuku show, and so there was a guy there from America, and he had it around his neck, and people do that thing where you unravel it at the end of the day, so you look like a James Bond type thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love putting on bow ties, but I've never put on one. So he showed me at a tuku concert.
Okay.
And so he's like, you can have mine. And so I've had his bow tie. That's what I use on stage for the last 4 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
cool. So the ones you sent me, this would be the second, third, and fourth pair I've had in my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So these are the special ones that get put in a glass case when I've retired after my Oscars and stuff.
I like it. I feel like tying a bow tie is like sometimes such a sort of traumatic event that it's just scarred in your memory. Like the first time, just like sweating, you want to get on stage, and you're like.
I know, right? But the funny thing is, you only think about it now, and I'm like, why don't schools put these on? Like, I mean, why hasn't it been? Yeah, because the thing is, I wanted to start a rural school for creatives, kind of. And I love the fact that you've done product design, because that's really the kind of focus that we're trying to do in the rural areas. And I think that would probably be the school uniform I'd have on, that you can have it on or just have it around your neck, but just have it somewhere. It's a form of creative structure in a way.
Yeah, because it is, right? Because like you'll see people will tie them differently and stuff. Interesting. Yeah. And also they're kind of in some ways more practical. Like you see, I've spoken to a lot of doctors who are like, you're not allowed to wear a necktie because it like gets in places like,
right.
So bow ties out the way. So
and it's weird because it's always been worn by very like accomplished. It was the next level, right? Of dressing up. Like you wore a tie every day to work, but you put on a bow tie when it was an event, or you were a professor, or you were, at that level. If you were an eccentric creative, not just a creative, but you're eccentric, then So it's almost like a qualification of sorts. I feel. Even in my career, like literally the amount of money I could charge for a gig changed when I started putting on a bow tie.
I like that. Because also it forces you to speak to people, because people are gonna like, be like, hey, like what's that you're wearing? Like where's that from?
Yeah, exactly. What's your story? What's your backstory?
Yeah. Interesting.
No, and awesome. It's funny. My mom, when I was telling her about this thing that we're doing, and she was like, because I moved to the rural areas, and a lot of my friends are like, how are you gonna pull off having a bow tie on in the rural areas? And I was like, no, my grandfather used to go to the fields in a jacket and a tie. He was like old school, wore a hat and everything. And his logic was that you could get called at any time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's like, you have to be ready. You could get called at any time. So you need to be able to like switch it up, zhuzh it up or whatever. So I believe in people being smart out in the field. So that's my vibe with this whole thing.
I like that. Yeah, so I've been traveling a lot also, and it's like, you kind of want to have casual clothes, but also like be ready to dress up. And so like, sort of dressing for both is a bit of like a new style kind of thing. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's quite a cool it's a cool dress up, dress down type vibe, because you could pull it off with anything. Like, it's difficult to do that with a tie. I think sometimes the tie sort of keeps you in a very rigid type scenario, but you could see me like covered in paint and have a bow tie on, and I'm cool. I'll still feel like I'm, as long as you've got, I think the main things is like your bow tie, if you've got good hair, and if you've got spectacles. So since I don't have good hair, then I've got the spectacles and the bow tie to cover me in that, in that regard.
I think it key accessories. That's awesome. I was wondering, you're talking about creativity, what that means to you as a comedian and in the work that you do. Like, have you got a definition for creativity?
Yeah, so I think creativity is that thing at that basic form where you think of something and then you perform a number of steps to realize what you saw in your head.
Okay.
And so, like, you know, whether it's like an idea or it's a joke. So people often ask, like, how do you reconcile the fact that you're a graphic designer, animator one moment and a comedian the next? And for me, the approach has never changed. Like, a joke enters my head, and then there's a number of steps before I can tell that joke and it becomes funny. The same way that I could think up a design of a character, and it's the same thing. I have to do a number of steps before it becomes a reality. And I think it's something that's innate in all of us. We just live in a world that has systems to box it and change it and give it categories and tell it what to do. And so, in fact, what we live in is a world that makes us uncreative. It's a bunch of, like, do you know what I'm saying? So we actually have to kind of unlearn being uncreative back to our origins, which is what we are, which is creative.
Yeah, no, I dig that. And it's interesting, like, having these different forms, right? So you get a joke that pops into your head, or like an idea for a character or something that you're going to draw, and like, because you've got these different tools, you can kind of bring them out into the world. I mean, I'm finding it now. It's so weird. We are on a 70 by 70 piece of rural land, right? And every time that we're sharing a video of what we're doing in the rural areas, people keep saying, but that's not rural. You're not living a rural lifestyle. And then I keep coming back to people and I say, that very design that you have in your head of what a rural lifestyle is started with someone like me who did something and everybody followed it after they saw that it worked. Yeah.
Because as much as people want to say, like, in Africa, we used to communicate with cave paintings, it's actually incorrect, because the person who communicated with cave paintings was an artist. That was the creative. That was the person who everyone thought was crazy, who told the stories on the walls. Because if everyone communicated with cave paintings, then we'd have more cave paintings per capita, if you think about it. But in fact, what we have is a few presentations by a creative to a group of people to articulate an idea or to tell a story. And so this whole idea of us being in the rural areas is to, kind of redefine what creativity is. Like, who says you have to live in a round hut? The round hut could be perfect, but who says you have to because you're in the rural areas? Who came up with that brand manual, so to speak?
I like to give cave painters as content creators.
They were. It's easy for aliens to come and think all of us were YouTubers, right? And the truth is, we aren't. There's only a few YouTubers out in the world, and the rest are people watching the content. And the art, culture, tradition, all of those is like just people getting a window into how a society was led by a group of creators. It's just that people don't realize this, but creatives were the ones who were really running things. There was a king and a whole bunch of creatives giving the king ideas on what to do. That's basically
that's interesting. Hey, when you like look back on history, it's the people who made the words and made the paintings that that's what shapes how we think about the past. And and that affects how we think about now. So
yeah,
interesting.
No, absolutely.
Huh. Yeah, I do this thing where I like scroll back to like, I go into people's like social profiles and like scroll way back.
Right.
Sometimes on Instagram. I did it on your YouTube.
Right.
Like I like to see where people started out and like
started before it.
Yeah, so it's like fascinating to see, like, because you've been making a lot of content like over the years. And then it's interesting to see how you have like been trying different things. How do you think about like, I mean, you've maybe done things that didn't work out. Do you think of that as like a failure, or how do you like frame that? Those different things?
So for me, I think, you know, I'm what you call like a subsistence creative, right? So my creativity is like how a subsistence farmer, you grow food for yourself and then you grow for everyone else.
Okay.
So a lot of the stuff that I do has been to solve personal problems. Like, you know, like, so if I'm going through something that I need to solve, I'll come up with a creative solution for it before it becomes, say, a business venture or an initiative, or, you know, any of those things. So, but what you will see with me in terms of content is that I kind of moved backwards, because you're looking at, you know, I started an ad agency. I used to run one of the biggest production companies in the country so I came from high-end production, and I'm in this journey of having to actually dumb down what I do, you know, like literally having to produce content without having a production designer and a director and a, you know, thing of photography and so on. So from a content perspective, that's where my content lies. But the projects I've worked on, it's solving a problem. So when my wife and I decided that we wanted to travel the world, comedy was the thing that we used in order to do that, because that allowed me to be able to use something that was there in my genetics. Like my dad was a comedian, so I could approach it like a subject matter and say, okay, I've got the bare bones of what a stand-up comic would be, but what does it take to be a great comic? And so studying comedy itself. And so this is where you find me getting into comedy. And then the cooking is my mom. My mom is a home economics lecturer. So again, food solved our problems on a daily basis. Like, how do you feed yourself? Like they often say, like, artists sort of struggle and you think with your stomach and, you know, that kind of thing. Food was one of those things that really saved my career, because I didn't have to think with my stomach. I was already a celebrity chef. I was already making money from my cooking on a daily basis. But that solves a problem at home, because that's what we eat. We literally are feeding ourselves.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so when you look at some of the things that we do, some of these initiatives, initially what you see is that they're actually solving like a problem. So the moving to rural has to do with us getting off the rent trap. So while a lot of people might see, oh, Carl has tried a lot of things, but if you look at the linear progression of it, you will see it's along the same journey. So, you know, me moving into a tent, then moving into a bus, and then the bus becoming the piece of land that we're on. And before we know it, we have a farm. And then I get into, that's why they call it a property ladder, because you climb up properties until you get to a certain level. So all of those things have been like, rather than give people the bigger picture, what they then see are the small bits. Like, you know, they see, oh, Carl tried to do like a football thing here. But what I normally do is I work with prototypes. I create a prototype and I put it out onto the market, see how it works. If that doesn't work at that particular point, then I'll say, okay, maybe this isn't the time. I put it away. We put a lot of research behind it again. We push it into the market. Before you know it, it's evolved into like a third, fourth iteration of an initial thought process. And I like to keep myself very open to an idea becoming something else. Today you think you're growing grapes. Tomorrow you're making a cognac. And all of that has been because of your knowledge of making grapes, pressing wine, fermenting, knowing how to pot still until you get a cognac. And so in my life, that's what you see. When you see the progression, there's some things that haven't matured to where they need to be. So that's to answer the question, like, do you see them as failures? No, I actually see them as almost steps towards a bigger end goal of something I have an interest in.
That's great. Yeah, because I'm like just looking at them, I'm seeing like this little bit here, this little bit, and then now what you're doing with Ekaya, I'm seeing so many things like just overlapping. I'm like, oh, it's awesome, like how it's coming together, like the way you're promoting camping, the way you're promoting Zim tourism to Zim, and it's just all kind of blending together, and like, yeah, the dots, you can like join the dots kind of thing.
And the weird thing is that you also evolve. Like, you know, let's look at people like Steve Jobs, right? If Steve Jobs was defined by the first iPhone as an example, you know, because that's Steve Jobs really coming back to us again from when he got kicked out of Apple. And so when he comes out and that first iPhone, and you look at where we are with Apple products, you then see that not only is there an evolution in what you, because at that particular point in time, you only create what you are capable of doing with what you know and the times, right? The solution, but the solution also evolves and you also evolve. So if you look at me right at the beginning of starting comedy was me saying this was an avenue to open the door up for people to know that I'm actually more an ideas and conceptual person than I am a stand-up comic or a chef or whatever. It's for people to actually see that, okay, if we put Carl in a boardroom and we've got a problem, he's one of the guys we need to have in the boardroom, because chances are he's going to come with an idea that's left of center. It's going to be easy to implement. He's probably got the tools to be able to prototype it. That's the sort of category I sit in. But for now, people are more comfortable with saying Carl's a comic because it's easier for them to digest what I am to them more than it is a definition of who I am.
Yeah, and what you guys are doing now is really interesting with, so you've got Ekaya, but you've also got this, I mean, because I'm in the UK currently, and I see there's sort of like this trend of what they call service design, which seems to be like the term they use for what you guys are doing in a way, because like you've gone into hotels and stuff and just help like bring in this different perspective of how to do things.
Right.
I don't know what you call that, what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so I think, you know, we're realizing there has to be a shift with how companies are thinking nowadays. There has to be a shift with how, you know, you work with the government, for example, how generations can bring out their ideas, and this is certainly find a foothold. One of the struggles that our generation has had is that we've had lots of great ideas, but just no place to jack in. Like, you know, the system hasn't been there. It hasn't been kind to us. But on the one hand, I think it's because we haven't analyzed that the times have changed. This is not the time where a great idea finds finance. Sometimes a great idea, you know, has to find a place that's appropriate. And for me, what was appropriate was to answer the question of tourism as an example, was to say, okay, so COVID has basically killed our international tourist arrivals. So what are we going to do now? And the answer was that we're sitting on something, like I believe in biomimicry a lot, right? And I just believe in this whole idea of just looking at nature and what clues nature can give us. But we also exist in the same way. So something at a small level should work on a large level. So to come back to it, with tourism, how do Zimbabweans travel? A lot of Zimbabweans, especially Black Zimbabweans, go to the rural areas, but they don't look at it as tourism. They go there all the time. There's a whole industry behind going to the rural areas and so on, but people go to their own rural homesteads, but they don't go and visit other people's rural homesteads. And that was the missing key. Like what was making people not do this? That's because the design of the rural homestead has no particular brand manual. It's all up in the air in terms of what a rural lifestyle is supposed to be. You know, you've never gone and stayed at Mr. Mpofu's house simply by just boarding a bus and just going to the first rural homestead you see. So here was the challenge of how do we create this culture? And the only way that you can create the culture is for us to go live in the rural areas and just find out what the lifestyle is like. But in there, also find out how we would adjust to it. So we're almost studying ourselves. We're saying, what don't I like? Do I like, we went there not liking the rural house, you know, but then when we started researching about cob structures and the tensile strength of the grass and whatever, and all of the clay and the different types of clay, we got very excited about it. And so we start playing with prototypes in that particular regard. But we're answering the question, how do you get Zimbabweans to start traveling to the rural areas? Because if you do that, then you start getting a lot more foreigners wanting, because I travel around the world a lot, and a lot of foreigners complain that when they come to Zimbabwe, we've intellectualized our country to such an extent that we put up people in hotels. We don't show them anything uniquely African. And even if we do see something African, it's usually like an expensive lodge somewhere in the bush. And yet what they want to do is they want to spend time with rural people. They want to know that Africa that they see. So we are in the process of recreating what the business of rural is going to be. What is the business of solving those problems? What is the business of tourism in that regard? What is the business of design in a rural context? What are the patterns, the shapes, the colors? Like all of these things happen to be things that are the sum of parts, right? From a creative perspective. You don't just say we're selling tourism if you're not studying the games they're playing. What do people wear in the rural areas? Because I'll tell you, you go to any place in a rural European setting, there's almost a dress code. And yeah, I know. How does that happen? So we are in this journey of discovery and creating at the same time, because that's what the creative process is. It's very collaborative in a way.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's always the best thing, right? Because like if you're building something that you would want to use, then there's a good chance that there's like enough people in the world who would also want to use it, that it can actually work as a business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's where it starts with every business. Again, comes back to something at a basic level. Some of the most important products of our time were solutions to the creator of that product. If the minute it solves that problem, I come back to Steve Jobs and him taking a calligraphy class, and then the fonts being used on an Apple, as an example. You just took a calligraphy class because it would be cool to score some checks or whatever it is. But then eventually you then start looking at the bedrock in terms of like, the font design of their operating systems and their programs and that kind of thing. Then you suddenly realize that, oh, this solved a problem for someone. And that's why there was a conviction to say this product works, because it's not just trying to sell it to someone. You sold it to yourself, pretty much,
Yeah, that's awesome. And how do you think we can like sort of promote creativity for youngsters? Like it feels like a lot of people almost stumble upon creativity right now. And I don't know if you've got any ideas about that, or things that like helped you, because you're kind of like a free spirit. And like, so what's allowed you to do that, and how can we do that for the next generation?
I think to a great extent, it depends the level of responsibility you want to give yourself. I think as an artist, you can be responsible for creating the best that you can do, regardless of what the world thinks of it. And, you can set yourself apart from that perspective. There are those of us who feel burdened to want to solve problems for people. And sometimes what's artistic in me has had to take the back burner in a way, and now look at art from a functional perspective. So not so much just not just so much its aesthetic value, but what does it do? Because I could, what I prefer to do as an artist, I used to enjoy doing figure drawing. That's what I used to enjoy. But from a functional perspective, my parents kept pushing that it wasn't solving a problem. It wasn't gonna earn me money to be in a room with naked women and draw pictures of them. It would be great if I wanted to just keep that, but what was I using it for? And so when you then, I think this is where over time you start seeing a function, right? You start seeing a function of, okay, how can I bring in the stuff that I know, but how can it solve a problem? And in solving a problem, can it actually generate money to be a sustainable business? And those three things are very different things, right? Because one of them has to do with getting good. The other one has to do with getting seen. And the last one has to do with getting paid. And so once you understand the relationship between those three things, that sweet spot, is where sometimes you can then fit in, because a lot of the young artists out there are like, no one is paying attention to us, no one knows us. Then you now need to think about, who do you want that attention from? Once you figure that out, then give them a product that will have that attention, but make sure that it's making money at the end of the day, or else you will end up in the same sort of heap as, you know, a lot of us were in our early 20s, you know, where the art wasn't paying. It wasn't paying anything. And it's not to say that it's about money, but it's not paying in the sense that it wasn't creating a function in your life to keep it sustained to a great extent.
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting, and I think, I mean, like, how have you been learning? Because you've done so many different things. Like, I mean, you studied nursing, for example, but you've done graphic design, you've done comedy, you've done a lot of learning, I guess, through doing stuff. But what else have been your sources for learning?
So, you know, one of the greatest things was having my parents split up when I was 5. And so when I had to, my parents used me as a pawn between the two of them, as from a custody perspective. So I was jumping between my dad and my mom, and with my mom, I was staying with a lot of different relatives. I had to adjust very early. And you can tell from my early years, the fact that I used to call myself Carl Joshua Ncube at an early age was very important in establishing the dominance of my name or my brand in a space, right? I wasn't there to be egotistical, but I was there to be heard. Like I was like, okay, fine, you guys are going to bully me in school, but at least get my name right, you know, get my name right, so that, like, you know, at the end of the day, I didn't want to be linked to anyone else. It created an identity for me. Having to be in a new school every year allowed me to interact with people, listen a lot more, observe a little more, learn how to get into a group or a crowd or a space. I mean, I was doing this every year from the time I was in grade 1, you know, so even when I got lost, I was supposed to be in grade 5, so I skipped a grade and went into grade 6. Nice. And the learning curve was insane for me, because I had to firstly pretend that I was in grade 6 when I wasn't. And I had to keep that a secret for like a whole term. So the one guy who discovered, I had to bribe him and give him my sandwiches every day. So I didn't have sandwiches for the whole of my grade 6, right? But when I look at all of those, like, I look back in retrospect, there's a way in life that you can use some of these bad things and you become worse, or you can use this to become better.
Yeah.
And so for me, I use this as an opportunity to be better. How could I be better in a year than the people that were already, like, how could I get in with this group of people?
Yeah.
What made you special to be part of that group, you know? And so for me, it just resembles how we operate now, how you get into new markets. You come with a product and you're like, there's 10 players who've been there. You're the new one in the market. Everyone's been doing comedy, but you're the first comic to come in, and then, you know, you have to establish your dominance pretty early. That's basically part and parcel of what we should be teaching in the schools and so on, because that's where my learning is literally come from, was mimicking exactly how life would be.
Yeah. How do you, those like hard lessons that you get from like your parents divorcing and stuff, like, how do you teach that? I mean, experience, that's why your 20s are maybe difficult kind of thing, because it's like you figuring out a lot of these, like the school of hard knocks kind of thing.
Right.
But
I think that's one of the things that, interesting, like, how do you bring that? Like for us, we wanted to establish a school that taught exactly that. So rather than say to kids, like, say no to bullying, or tell someone that you're being bullied, or, you know, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I think to a great extent, we're not paying real attention to how people have learned and have strategized and have figured their way out. Like, for example, we teach kids to be more accommodating, rather than teach kids what the outliers on how to penetrate spaces, strategies on how to, like, how do you get noticed? You dress differently, you look differently. Why is that a big selling point? We brush that off in terms of advice, and we say being different is not a bad thing, but that in itself is a masterclass. It's a masterclass on how are you like, for example, I'm a Zimbabwean comedian. What made me special around the world is when my wife and I wrote down and we said, listen, what's special about us is that we come from Zimbabwe. We come from a country that shouldn't have a stand-up comedian. And so comedy clubs are now booking me on the basis that they'll say, tonight is a special night because we've got someone from, you know, that little country, Zimbabwe, that's always talking about Robert Mugabe? Well, come and hear everything about that. And now you see, the thing is, a disadvantage quickly turned into an advantage.
Oh, yeah.
And you look at it in other countries, like in Asia, there are teachings by a lot of wise people on some of these things. You know, when you think of the yin and yang, it's kind of give and take, right? On the one hand, kids need to actually understand that divorce may be a good thing for you. It may be a good thing to be in a blended family. It may be a good thing to have a terrible stepfather or a bad stepmother. These things, if the teachings are done well, rather than just brush it aside and say, you know, life will be kind to you one day, go look at the examples of the 1,000 billionaires in the world. I can guarantee you that a lot of their stories don't sound like the happy-go-lucky kid with the okay family. And it's a lot of homeless people who went broke, who had bad marriages and bad, you know, these are the ones who changed the world. So it's, you know, I think that's not being taught.
If you get kids to start businesses at a young age, that would almost like put them under stress, like in a good way, like, and they would learn some like hard lessons that in a kind of safe environment, trying to start a business and like.
But look at how many things you've watched in sitcoms, and you know, we come back to that whole issue of the sum of all parts, because in trying to solve the Zimbabwean problem, if we look at some of the little things we've seen in our sitcoms, how many times did we see a little girl with a lemonade stand? Entrepreneurship, right? How many times did we see an episode with a science project? Right? That's, you know, that's some of these things, like we don't actually realize that we don't do in our African context. You don't walk around in a neighborhood and see a lemonade stand.
Yeah, I was thinking about that actually. Yeah. Like I really didn't have, I mean, it's kind of like maybe a privileged thing to some extent, but I didn't have a job until, I don't know, my 20s kind of thing. That was like my first job. So, and I thought of like starting my own business now and again. Like I sold some stuff in the school tuck shop and things like that, but it just was not encouraged. And it's a weird, I don't know why we do that. Like if it was just my sort of family or my community, or if it's more general around the entire country.
So there's a weird thing that actually happens, and it's also maybe like I noticed a lot of my white friends, for example, when they were growing up, they went on camping holidays, for example. A lot of my white friends owned a tent, or they have a tent somewhere that, you know, oh, this is my tent, you know, this is my first tent, and then I bought another tent, and then I upgraded and I bought a gas thing, and, you know, before I know it, now my car's got a roof rack with a whole roof tent thing, and they're like in their 30s, now they've got 3 cars that they use when they go out, right? But amongst all of my black friends, right, we don't have that kind of, that subculture, and we don't understand why it changes how people look at things. It's because when you're young and you own a tent, that is you're teaching ownership. You see, when you own a tent, this is why I had to go backwards and live in one. I had to go buy a tent because I was renting all of this time, and I was 40. And so when I bought a tent, it's my first time to own where I live.
Yeah.
And it was mind blowing. As much as people don't understand why I did it, it was mind blowing, because at 41, for the first time, I owned the land I was sitting on in the tent I was in. My confidence changed. It changed how I negotiated anything. Like I literally think my life began at 40, because that's where I then understood that if I had owned a tent when I was 8, I would be a completely different entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because when you own a tent, then you know that if you don't set up your tent, then you don't have a place to sleep. If you don't have a checklist for your camping stuff, if you don't go out, if you don't go put up the fire at this time, all of those lessons are not lessons you learn in school.
Yeah.
Majority, and it's weird because I don't know why we put our kids in school, because by the time they're age 6, some of them have learned how to speak 2 or 3 languages. So the truth of the matter is that most learning doesn't happen in the school. Majority of it happens outside of the school. And the issue is that if we start to package those things and put it into a curriculum, then you start actually building a school for creatives.
Yeah, there's a camping store that's just like, when I share this video, there's a camping store that's gonna be like, yes, thanks, Carl. 10 sales are going up.
I know, right? It's like that changes everything. It's like,
right, Carl, are you sorry?
No, it's like, I'm gonna start a business. Let me get a tent.
Yeah. Are you gonna have another go at tying your bow tie?
What was that time, by the way? Was it one?
It was 1:46, 1 minute 46 seconds.
Do you really think I could beat that time, though?
I've done it in 25 seconds. That's the fastest I've timed myself.
Okay, cool. Okay, let me take this off. Let's try. Okay. Let's try a one.
Awesome.
Okay. Okay. This time I'm taking off my.
Okay.
So you'll have to signal with your hand when you want me to start, and then yeah.
Okay, cool.
Ah, 25 seconds, did you hear that? Huh? What? 25 seconds? Oh, what the hell? 25 seconds for a bow tie.
I might have been lying. Now he doesn't have me distracting him, so this might actually be a bit quicker.
Okay, I got it.
It's looking good. It's looking good.
How many seconds I'm on?
Wow. We're at 30 seconds.
No, I didn't. I thought I got it. But I didn't. I put it in the wrong way around. Put it in the wrong hole. No, yeah, I think so. No. You know you've got no headphones on. Yeah, I know.
Oh, we nearly had 1 minute here.
This dude here, he's just doing nonsense. He's busy. He can't find the hole. He can't find the correct hole.
That is terrible.
From your wife.
I want to wear that out.
Yeah, there you go. Finish, man.
Is it?
Yeah. No, it doesn't matter. It's still a book. Yeah. Put your hands up.
That's worse than the first one. That's worse than the first one.
No way.
That was terrible. 127. No, I'm not going to attempt that a third time.
Oh, really?
That was too stressful.
You were nearly done at like 30 seconds. You were nearly done.
Really? No, but I think it's this. I always get confused on what to pull at the back here.
Yeah.
I think that's my. Jeez. That's. All right. I'm never doing that again.
All right. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
27.
27.
Let's leave that as my best one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I don't think I'm beating that.
So Carl goes to the top of the leaderboard.
Yay.
There we go. So like get someone else on the podcast, and then we'll see.
I like that. Yeah, we'll see who can beat that.
Awesome. Sweet. That's great. Practice makes perfect, right?
I know.
So something I was wondering about also is how because creativity is like this thing of just having lots of ideas, right? Just divergent thinking, as they call it. And then, but as a business, like at some stage you need to kind of like focus and so how do you do that? Like how do you turn off your brain from thinking of like new things, or how do you channel that? I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I think because the brain is just always on, I don't switch it off. What I try to do is I try to pick off the things that I know. I've got 3 piles. I've got things that because I'm very spiritual, right? So I've got 3 piles. So stuff that I can do, that I'm in control of, that I can do. It just requires Carl, Then I've got a pile of things that require money. usually I'll put them down and then write down what money is required to have these things done. Then there are things that can be done if God steps in. So things to do like opportunities, like if God, decides to open this door, this channel for me or whatever, then I put that in a pile. And I try to only focus on the things I can do. So if I'm not capable of doing it, or I can't pass it on to someone else or collaborate with someone, then chances are that I'm not going to go ahead and do. I'm not going to go ahead and do the thing. So it keeps me sort of disciplined in terms of doing the things that I can, are very much within my power. A lot of the times I try to put it under the structure of a company, and therefore the company has a range of things that it can do, just like any company would. So it has its research and development section. It's got its products that are on the market at the moment, and collaborations or products that we work in sponsorship or we're in partnership with other people. So that's basically the but like I said, it first has to solve our problems in our household before anything else. If it can't, then I'm not really interested in stuff that doesn't solve anything for me. Because then it's difficult to one, put a value on it, and two, to put the right amount of time in it, the honesty that it requires.
Yeah, that's a nice way to say no to a lot of things. Right.
Yeah, true. I think I wrote this chapter in my book about different revenue streams, because people only think of ideas according to revenue streams. So just putting it in the language that people want to hear it. But I often look at ideas like kids. A lot of them are kind of born by accident. You don't mean to have them, and they do come up. You find out you're pregnant, so so you deal with it, right? So in that pregnancy, there's a lot of processes. It takes 9 months before the child is born, and when the child is born, each child is nurtured differently. Some kids are loud and proud. Some are super talented. Some just like to stick to their books. Some are probably not as great at school or great as anything, but you still love them. And that's how you nurture your different ideas or thought processes. So rather than sort of discard them, I think more the process of nurturing them. Some of them like, for example, I developed a board game. And the board game, I nurture that board game in the sense that my wife and I play it a lot. And when friends come to our house, they play it. But we haven't put it out there as a product because it's not at that stage yet. And so sometimes I don't kill off ideas. I'll use them at home. They function. Cal can cook, as in the cooking thing. It worked at home when I started keeping a recipe diary because I was diabetic. And so I started keeping a food diary, but the food diary turns into recipes. They turn into a cooking show. And then before you know it, it's now a revenue earner. So I try not to kill them. I try to just nurture them, and but just having the discipline to not just run with something. I think that's the issue. A lot of creatives, you think you've got a great idea, so you must run with it. I don't think every idea needs you to run with it, but it needs you to understand you're pregnant at the moment, or the baby is born. You just need to know the stages. Once you know the stages, then you know how to handle them.
Nice. And it's kind of like with kids when they get to like 18 or 21 or whatever, sometimes you just got to let them go so they can grow. Same with your ideas.
Sometimes a lot of times they, like, your ideas will fight you. I remember when I started my own company, tattoo was like, and so when I lost my company, this is like when your kid decides, you know what, I'm going to go marry that dude that likes smoking weed, who hangs around Camden Town or whatever. That's all good. And I want to forget everything else that you taught me. That's cool. Your company will do that to you, and it will leave home. And you just there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. But I think sometimes, and I often say this to my wife, the more I let go of an idea, the more ideas I get. So I always feel like sometimes when a child leaves the house, it gives you more time to focus on other things.
Nice. And you lived outside of Zim for a number of years while you were studying in the UK. And I mean, there's a lot of Zimbabweans. I was actually wondering what the number is I wonder how many Zimbabweans there are outside of Zimbabwe. It's kind of an interesting.
Yeah, because a lot of nationalized and they're now British, so we don't actually now know.
Yeah, but I was thinking we're like a decentralized nation.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who sort of view that negatively, but I don't know if you've thought along the same lines and if there's any positive sides to that from the work you're doing.
Yeah, I think what's happened is that Zimbabwe is definitely decentralized. Zimbabweans are definitely not together. Zimbabweans are not a community. Zimbabweans are not, they're not one of those countries that's really pushing the agenda of being Zimbabwean as much as, say, the Nigerians would do and so on. I'm just doing a comparison, like some of the things that I've heard being talked about. But I believe that there's a huge opportunity in that. It's so huge, it's unbelievable, is that Zimbabwe doesn't have this level of community leadership on that level to say, because the minute you're in the diaspora, the only conversation you always hear is, what can we do back home? And yet nobody thinks, if I was a company and Zimbabweans were my products, I'd be so happy with the level of expansion we have at the moment. Because I would say we're literally infiltrated so many different economies on so many different levels. And so I think right now we don't have that kind of leadership at a community level that's looking at this as an advantage to say, okay, so how many real estate Zimbabweans do we have that can maybe look at, say, certain sections of, say, London or in Italy or whatever it is, to buy large levels of land to leverage the governments to be able to set up the same way that the Chinese have done with the Chinatown in every single country they're in.
Yeah,
we haven't started thinking on that level. And I as much as sometimes I listen to some of these rooms on Clubhouse and people saying, what can we do back home or for the people back home? I'm like, can you just stop with that language? Because you're on the same planet. As far as I'm concerned, the ground you're standing on is no different to the ground I'm standing on.
Yeah.
The only difference is that a government has said that England is a different part of Earth to Zimbabwe, but it's not, it's Earth still. It's not like a pencil. A pencil doesn't work differently in England than it does in Zimbabwe. Nor does the oxygen. Okay, maybe oxygen works differently in England than it does in Zimbabwe. But I'm just saying that I think right now we're speaking to each other and we could have been one room apart for all we care.
Yeah.
But now we're connected a lot easier. A lot more stuff is easier to do at the moment. People have set up cryptocurrencies. I think Zimbabweans are just missing out this fantastic opportunity that we have to say, do we have products that bring us together? Do we have things that bring us together? Like if you look at like your product, like how it's brought us together. And what it does is that it's almost like the link, because the link isn't this side versus this side. It's just one strand that makes up something different, because unless someone comes up with another way of tying it,
Yeah.
And that's what we need to be doing with the Zimbabwean communities around the world, is to figure out how do we tie these things together? How do we bring them together so that they look better, or they function better, or they solve better problems? But it's a huge opportunity.
Because that example you make of like the Chinatowns, like there's nothing like that for Zimbabwe. Like, I mean, I think in London, maybe there's like places where a lot of Zimbabweans live, but it's like, and like, I feel like Zimbabweans have a sort of reputation in some ways, but it's not clear, and we're not like using it to our advantage. We're not leveraging it in ways. That's really
I think it's because we haven't set up the brand manual. I think the brand manual of what a Zimbabwean is supposed to be. What makes a Zimbabwean? We're the sum of a number of different parts. And so if we looked at ourselves as like a product and we said, okay, cool, what does it mean? Like we're just trying to redefine the space and tell Zimbabweans that, do you know that you can be famous, that you can be successful and live in a rural place? Like, I'm just trying to prove to people that geography is not the thing that's stopping you right now. I think what's stopping you is the state of your mind. I could literally, I mean, I'm doing this and I live in rural Zimbabwe. I don't see what part of my life, except for the part that I've been unable to make this appointment with you because of the lack of internet. But but this is a problem that can be solved, right?
Yeah,
it's a piece of equipment. It's a piece of equipment that's going to change things. And I think Zimbabweans have just literally looked at and said, okay, so the rural areas, you can't do anything. And I'm like, that is complete rubbish, guys. People tell us, like, in the rural areas, you can't own the property. You can't own the property you're on. It's like, yeah, but you don't own the property you're renting.
Yeah.
Has that ever stopped? I don't know companies that buy a house in order to operate. Most companies operate out of a rented space. So I'm a company and I'm operating out of a space that is not permanent. So that doesn't stop me. I can move from one rural homestead to the next. My company is not going to change. But I think our mindset just needs to change in terms of how we build this new Zimbabwean community. And I think it's a new one. It's definitely like a third republic.
I like it. Well, I'm really excited about having you help create the image, because every time I talk to you, like, paint this picture in my mind, and that's what you're saying at the beginning with creativity, and part of it is that image you get in your head and being able to share that with others. That's the leadership we need.
No, absolutely. Like I was thinking about this, how your product embodies smart villages for me. It's about being smart, thinking smart, just everything that we do is about being smart. So people see us in the rural villages with mud up to our ankles, but with a bow tie that shows us that, no, there's method to this madness, right? Because that's how we're trying to carve out our new identity, our new thought process of saying, listen, iPhone in one hand and a pick in the next or whatever, but trying to figure out more clever ways of solving our actual problems. I think that's where our biggest opportunity really lies in Zimbabwe now, is that every problem you've ever mentioned in your life, that's what I've now done. Everything that's bad that I've heard about Zimbabwe, that's a problem. Our company is about addressing each one. That's what Ekaya does. We just look at all the problems. If you say Zimbabweans untrustworthy, okay, we're going to work on that one. How do we bring about being trustworthy? What are the hallmarks of being trustworthy? What's the brand manual? Because it all comes back to the same thing. What's the manual? And then everyone else can follow a manual if they have an example.
Yeah, and your prototyping and testing kind of like pushes you to sort of see what the limits of what's possible, and then when you've found those limits, suddenly everyone can see the box that you're working in, or that's the brand manual. That's what it is. Like, okay, we can do that too. So. No.
Exactly. And if you look at, again, this whole idea of biomimicry, because when we talk about biomimicry, we always talk about nature, but we talk about nature as though humans are divorced from it. Like when we talk about analyzing nature, we analyze everything, insects, plants, whatever, but we don't look at human behavior. And humans always need a set of instructions in order to use a product. And so once there's a set of instructions, it's laid out in a sort of manual, but then after that, it gets passed down from generation to generation. Before you know it, it becomes tradition. And when it becomes tradition, it's very hard to change. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, the bow tie, there's a set of instructions. So like, if you look, you've got the product, you've got the product. So it's a standard shape, right? And then you've got the instructions. But then you've got different designs you can put on there, but it doesn't actually change how the product works.
Yeah.
The aesthetic value of the product changes because of, you can have 10 and this is the underlying problem with Zimbabwe, is the lack of product that's at the base of our behavior.
Yeah.
When you think about the rural areas, like if I asked you, how do you move to the rural areas? There isn't a manual that shows you. This is what we're doing, is to prototype so that people know that, living in the rural life area, just go to Carl's channel. If you watch episodes 7 to 10, it will outline exactly what it is. Before you know it, now we've got a huge number of people moving from urban to rural. Before we know it, now it's harder to convince people to move back into the urban areas because we've set the manual, we've set the rules. We put up the cave paintings, because once the cave painting is up, it's so hard to change people from that.
Yeah. Well, this is, it's so exciting to see you creating it all, Carl. Thanks. I think I've taken up enough of your time now. But
no, this was fun. This was awesome, fun, except for this stressful bit.
Yeah, I'm interested. It's like such an interesting thing to see how it's going to work if other people are going to be up for it, and it just changes the sort of mood of an interview, right? Like,
yeah, it does. But and you know what's weird is that it also just shifts the. It's almost like the whole dynamic of how people view the product, right? Because ultimately people are going to start practicing a lot more, start using it a lot more, right? It's, and one of the things that I found, especially in our culture, why I mentioned this is because people just think it's not appropriate to put on a bow tie. Like they buy the stuff and then they're like, oh, I'll wait until, it's an ideal time to do it. It's like, no, a bow tie is like an everyday thing though.
Yeah.
It should be every day.
No, I love it. Awesome, Carl. Where's the best place for people to find you and to find what you guys up to? So it's at Carl Joshua Ncube on pretty much everything. I think I'll try to keep it simple now. I keep it to like my Instagram, Facebook, and then people can find our story on TouriZIM Ekaya, which is on YouTube, our YouTube channel. Just to follow what's happening from a rural perspective. See what the lifestyle is like as we try and build this new future. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Carl. Yeah. I'm excited to see what's next for you.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Cool.
And
musatire katichire ndeizo zvinotiedza asi muti nduwerende ndewakaipa musatire katichire ndeizo zvinotiedza asi muti ndewakaipa musatire katichiwira